You better run, you better run. There's a man who fears no one, no one. Run, you better run, you better run. And if he finds you, you'll be done, done.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Killing Time with Kayla. And we're going to jump right into it this week because I'm still reeling off of what I saw last night, which isn't the first time that I saw it. IMAX and A24 decided to do a re-release of, I don't even know why I'm trying to bury the lead considering I do have this, not the actual embalmed hand from the movie, one of the best horror movies that I've seen in quite a long time, came out a couple years ago. We are talking about Talk to Me. So yes, I went and saw it when it first came out back in 2023. Disclaimer, I watched the movie this time completely sober. Normally I like to grab a little glass of wine or a little cocktail before going into a movie. It just relaxes me, eases my brain, especially when I'm going to a movie as messed up as this one. But I am in the midst of dry January, so there were no wine-induced zoning out moments for me this time. So, like I said, Talk to Me has been out for quite a while. So this isn't so much a review. We are going to run down some key scenes that happened in the movie. But this is more of an exploration of some things that maybe stood out to me differently this time that I didn't necessarily fully catch or grasp the first time. Also, considering there is a sequel in the works, I want to kind of brainstorm with you of where we think the sequel might go, or if it's going to be a prequel to kind of tell us a story about what happened before we met, Riley and Mia's characters and Talk to Me. Now, for those who haven't seen the movie, here's a quick breakdown. Talk to Me is a 2022 Australian horror flick. It stars Sophie Wilde, Alexandra Jensen, Miranda Otto, Joe Bird. It first premiered at the Adelaide Film Festival. A24 released it in the United States in July of 2023, and critics absolutely loved it. The story, the direction, the horror sequences, the performances, especially by Wilde and Joe Bird, got a lot of praise. Speaking of Sophie Wilde, fun fact, Sophie Wilde recently co-starred in Baby Girl with Nicole Kidman. She played Nicole Kidman's, like, her number two or her assistant. So I wouldn't have put those together that Sophie Wilde was playing that character, but she is also who played Mia and Talk to Me. So the movie did absolutely phenomenal in the box office, raking in a whopping $92 million worldwide on a $4.5 million budget. Just grasp that for a minute. The movie, they only put $4.5 million into this thing and walked away with $92 million. I think that's enough to make any box office a very, very happy girl. Now, let's talk a little bit about this story. It's friends, they find this creepy embalmed hand, like this one right here, but again, this one is not embalmed. I have actually not tried to play the game. There's certain things I don't mess with, and that is trying to make contact with the underworld. I don't fuck with the Ouija boards, and I'm not gonna fuck with this hand, but I have it as decoration. But anyway, the friends in the movie, they find this creepy embalmed hand, and it lets them talk to spirits. It's all fun and games until things get dark and one of them gets possessed. And the film really, beyond it just being a terrifying film, it really dives into the themes of devastation and grief and messing with the supernatural and what can happen. As the friends deal with terrifying consequences, they really discover their deepest and darkest fears. So the first time I watched the movie, I was like, oh shit, like this movie is really fucked up. But I also was like, okay, here's another possession movie. Kids take turns. They use the possessed hand to let the possessed get inside of them. Their heads go back. They start the practical effects on this part was some of my favorite. I mean, just the way their faces looked, absolutely terrifying. Their eyes like super blown up and dilated. They know as long as they get the hand ripped out of theirs after 90 seconds, all is going to be Gucci and they can move it on to the next one. But the kicker is, if you do not get the hand off of your phalanges in the allotted 90 seconds, whatever is inside of you ain't gonna wanna leave. So the movie kicks off with Mia, played by Sophie Wilde, dealing with some heavy stuff. She's mourning her mom. At this point, she's like, her mom had passed this a couple years ago, 2 years ago. She was celebrating 2 years since her mom's passing. And there's just a lot of questions surrounding it. She doesn't know if her mom committed suicide or just accidentally took way more than she was supposed to take in her sleeping pills. But the whole vibe of this film that you get right off the bat is that Sophie's just dealing with a lot of overwhelming grief, and I feel like she's trying to find ways to forget about it, which is kind of how she gets involved with the embalmed hand. She's like trying to find a way to forget about what she's feeling inside with her mom. And so then it's pretty clear what this film is trying to convey to us. That possession in the film isn't just about the spooky, supernatural stuff that we see in possession films. It's conveying the deeper human emotions like guilt and suffering and loneliness. And here's a big one, a big part of this, peer pressure. So Riley, who's Mia's best friend's little brother, played by Joe Bird. Great work, by the way, Joe Bird. I don't think I had more of an emotional pull towards any of the characters as much as I did for Joe Bird, Riley. But Mia had a very special relationship with Riley. She almost was like this other big sister, but like the cooler big sister, although his big sister Jade, Mia's best friend, was there. Mia kind of swooped in was kind of like his little human shield. So one night they were all at Jade and Riley's house to play with a hand, and all the teenagers were doing it, and then Riley wanted to try it. But Jade was like, absolutely freaking not. You're too young. You're not doing this. I'm your big sister. I say no. End of the conversation. She walks out. Then it leaves Mia and Riley. And Riley is just pleading with Mia, like, please, just let me do it. And at first Mia's like, no, I just really don't think it's a good idea. And then he guilts her, as little brothers do, like, oh, I just really thought you were going to be on my side. I thought you were going to be cool, but I guess you're just not cool. And then I guess that just played to Mia's emotions. And then she decided to allow Riley to do it, as long as it was only for 50 seconds. So plenty of time to get the hand out of his hand so that everything could just go back to normal. So Joe gets strapped in. He reaches out his hand. He grabs the embalmed hand. And immediately he seems extremely rattled by who he sees, almost as if he recognizes who's across the table for him. And which we find out is Mia's dead mother, or is posing to be Mia's dead mother, as we find out. So Riley looks to Mia and starts talking to Mia as her deceased mother, and Mia falls for this. She immediately falls to her knees, walks up to Riley, and is having a conversation with who she thinks is her dead mom. And her dead mom is reassuring her that she did not leave Mia. She did not kill herself. She would never leave her. She would never hurt her. Mia's just getting pulled into this. The other kids are like, Mia, we got to stop this. It's going too long. And unfortunately, whatever entity was inside of Riley did what they aimed to do. They were able to distract from the situation, be stuck in Riley longer than the 90 seconds, and then the worst thing that happened in the entire movie, my least favorite scene, unfolded before our eyes. All of a sudden, Riley is banging his head on the table in front of him, just brutally banging his head. You're hearing the crushing. You're seeing bloods and guts and brains going everywhere. At one point, he gets his fingers, and he tries to rip out an eyeball out of the eye socket. I remember this movie being this brutal the first time I saw it, but I watched this movie this time, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, in IMAX. IMAX is this all immersive experience. The audio is just off the charts, and it felt like at one point I was hearing skull crushing coming out the left side of the theater, then from the right side of the theater. It was one of the most disturbing things to witness and watch in front of you. Then Jade runs back into the living room. They're trying to stop what's happening. Riley's chair just gets thrown backwards, where he continues to bang his head on some furniture. It was devastating. Here you are falling in love with this character of Riley, who's the younger brother to everyone. I'm watching it, and I already feel like I'm the big sister to him. There's a point in the movie where he's scared and he wants to sleep in the bed with his older sister, and then he ends up sleeping in the bed with Mia, and he clearly he's scared. He wants to be protected, and so you want to protect him when you're watching all of this happen. I was wanting to scream at the theater when he was about to grab the hand, like, no, Riley, just don't do it. Listen to your sister. So then when you saw all of this unfold, and you saw what was happening to him, there was no other feeling to feel than just absolute, like, just being mortified and just devastated. And you know, this is really where we start seeing Mia's guilt really manifest. She already was just heartbroken and just sad and depressed at the loss of her mother. And again, not knowing if her mother intentionally left her and decided to end her own life, or if her mother did actually accidentally die. And I feel like Mia knew the answer to this the entire time. I feel like deep down she knew that her mother did make the decision to leave Earth in her own way, but she didn't want to believe it. And so now she's seeing this thing happen to her best friend's little brother, someone she sees as a little brother, someone who she was supposed to keep safe, someone who trusted her. And it's because of her and her allowing him to do something that his older sister already said not to do, that now he is in this condition. And now she has to live with that on top of everything else that she's already dealing with. So on top of grief, now she has to deal with guilt. And what we start seeing in the movie is that all of these emotions are manifesting into what Mia actually begin seeing even when she doesn't have possession of the possessed hand. And so for the rest of the film, we just see Mia just deteriorate, become a shell of a person. She's stuck in this endless cycle of grief and despair. The movie even had us questioning if what we were seeing on the screen was actually real or not. It was a mindfuck for all of us watching. At not one point in this movie do you ever get to like take a breath. You're never comfortable. You're on edge the entire time. I'm gonna tell you, there's gonna be moments where you're absolutely sick to your stomach while you're watching this film. One of the moments is when we saw Riley's character absolutely just hammer in his brains. And that's one thing I want to give a lot of credit to this film for doing. Yes, there's plenty of gore. There's no shortage of gore. But scary movies can automatically, they can just use gore and get away with creating a good horror movie with not a lot of meaning, or depth to it. This movie did such a good job because you could have taken all of the gore out of it and it still would have been a devastatingly fucked up film. And the reason is because it capitalizes on these human emotions that all of us feel. Everybody in the audience knows what it feels like to lose someone. Everyone knows what grief feels like. Everyone knows what it feels like to blame yourself for something that you've done that has hurt somebody else. This movie banked on not just upsetting you with the gore and what you were seeing on the screen. It did a good job of upsetting you with just the blanket of sadness. The feeling that there's no escape for these kids, because there wasn't. By the end of the movie, Mia tried to end Riley's suffering by, kidnapping him from the hospital who was laying and rolling him into some oncoming traffic to kill him. But the entity claiming to be her mother, that she was still seeing, told her that the only way to help Riley escape from this pain and suffering, to help him escape from whatever was holding on to him in the underworld, was to end his whatever was left in him human, was to end that life. So earlier in the movie, before we got to the part where Mia tried to end Riley's suffering the first time, Riley was at the hospital just so beat up. Oh my God, again, back to the practical effects, the makeup, the way they were able to make his face look after he had probably been in surgery, the doctors tried to fix him up as much as they possibly could after what he had done to his face. The image of his face was enough to make you just like have a visceral ugh. Excellent job. But how dare you? Anyway, there came a point where Mia and Jade are trying to figure out what to do, how to save Riley. And Mia came up with this idea. Well, she was like, hey, did we blow out the candle? Because the thing with the hand is you light a candle, you do the whole possession thing, and then you got to make sure you blow the candle out at the end. Otherwise, the door could be still open between the underworld and this one. And so she's like, oh my God, did we blow out the candle? And Jade was like, oh, I don't know, I don't remember. And at first she was very resistant to the fact that Mia would suggest putting Riley through this again. But when she realized there was no other way, she was game. And so that's what they tried to do. And so they would strap Riley's hand up to it, but Riley is unconscious, and so it just wasn't working. So then Mia decided, against Jade's better wishes, that she would go back in, she would hold the hand, and she did that. She ended up sitting in front of a dead little girl, and I guess she felt like she could trust this little girl because she was a kid. But I mean, listen, I don't know about you. I've seen plenty of scary movies. Don't ever fucking trust a dead kid. But the dead little girl was like, yeah, we've seen him. I can take you to him. All of a sudden you see Mia just pulled down into this underworld. And then she looks over and she just sees Riley just in the sea of all these dead creatures, just pulling him down and pulling him further. And he looked like he was in pain and agony and he was suffering. And then she comes back out of it. And then she realizes that Riley is he's still in there, but they're about to lose him. He's hurting. They have to save him. They have to get him out of this. He was trapped. Anyway, so Mia knew what she had to do. She had to take her mother's advice, who wasn't her mother. She had to take advice she thought her mommy was giving her, and that was it was going to be up to her to end the suffering of Riley. And so that's when she decided to kidnap him. She tricked Jade into thinking that she wanted Jade to come see her at her house for something to show her. Jade arrives to Mia's house only to find Mia's dead, stabbed in the neck and bleeding out, dying. He wasn't dead in that scene though. So I am curious if he actually ended up dying. But anyway, Jade realized something was completely wrong, so she rushes back to the hospital, calls her mom, is like, Mia is dangerous. And at this point, Jade's mom had already kind of made up and apologized to Mia for blaming her. So we thought, oh, that's a sweet, everything and maybe is going to be okay. No, wrong. Mia was gone. There was no way of getting her back to any kind of normalcy. She was so just covered up and encompassed in all this grief and all this guilt. She was seeing things, she was feeling things. She had her mind set on what she was going to do. And so she kidnapped Riley, put him in a wheelchair, started wheeling him out down towards this busy freeway. But then there's a shift and Mia decides to jump off the overpass herself instead of pushing Riley into the traffic. Traffic stops. You see Jade running down the hill towards Riley, screaming to make sure she can get to him. Everybody gets out, but then you see a disheveled and twisted and broken and bloody Mia laying in the middle of the road because she had just been hit by this car. She's obviously dead. I mean, that's what you assume. But then you see her stand up easily. And for a minute, I was like, oh shit, wow, she's fine. No one else noticed her getting up. So then it clicks in your head, oh, okay, no, she dead. She gone. This is Spirit Mia who is moving on from her body. Then all of a sudden, she's in the hospital where everything was happening. She's walking down the hall. She sees someone. She's calling out. She thinks it's her dad. Which makes you wonder, was her dad dead? The lights start going out. All of a sudden, it's pitch dark where she is, and she sees this little faint light in the distance. She starts kind of going towards the faint light. Then you see like a face, a faint face of someone, and she keeps getting closer. And then, the best ending ever. I love a full circle moment. You see a table, the light, you see a hand reaching out, and then, hold on. You see a hand reaching out, and then she grabs it, and it's whoop, and now she's on the other side of the table, while some unknown idiot mortal on the other side is about to be possessed by her. Bravo. Bravo. Talk about goosebumps. This movie didn't miss. I left both times feeling sad and devastated and so impressed and in awe and sick to my stomach and unsettled. All of the things an excellent horror movie should make you feel. And I've always preferred horror movies that don't have a happy ending. There's nothing I actually despise more than sitting through a horror movie, being so scared, and then it ending like, everything is actually going to be okay, so you can go home, you can go to sleep. No, I want to have nightmares at night. I pay for nightmares. This is what, it wasn't just an unhappy ending. Like, you're so invested in these characters. You empathize with them. You sympathize with them. You can relate. It isn't just some slasher or some possession movie like I mentioned earlier. Like, it feels real. It feels too real. And the hard part is you leave knowing that these characters that you fell for, that you invested in, that you care about, you leave knowing that they never get a way out. Like, there's no escape. It's tough, especially Riley. We all loved Riley. And now that Mia's dead, Riley is just being pulled further and further into that deep, dark underworld of despair and torture. I give the movie an easy 10 out of 10. Literally no notes, none. Again, the acting, the cinematography, the practical effects, all A+. For all relatively unknown actors who joined a project with such a small budget, to see the success that they did, it's almost unheard of. So we do know there is a sequel in the works. I wonder if that can also maybe mean a prequel in the works. We don't really have any information on what that is going to entail, but I did write down a few ideas of where I think they could go with the next one. So tell me what you think. We can go back to the surviving brother from the opening scene. If you remember, there was a big rager party happening, and it's at these brothers' house. One of the brothers goes and beats down the door where his younger brother's in there. His younger brother's sitting on the bed with bloody back, and he tries to get him out of there. And then he grabs a knife, stabs his brother who tried to get him out of there. And then you see little brother take the knife and just, this was probably one of the second hardest parts to see in the film. Just stab himself. You could just hear the noise that you would hear if you were to stab yourself in the head. That was a rough scene. So anyway, what if we go back to that? Maybe where there was a sibling rivalry, before that, where the story, we could have the story follow the brothers. Maybe they discover it while cleaning out their late grandmother's attic. I don't know. They each have different views on using it. We could see a little backstory of the brothers if it is a prequel. And I think that is probably the obvious choice of seeing how these two got their hands on the hand. Another idea, we could go years after the original events. The grown-up surviving friends are haunted by their experiences and the guilt of what they unleashed. They could receive a chilling message hinting that the entity they thought they may be defeated had returned. To face their fears, they reunite to confront the consequences of their actions, and they go into battle with whatever is happening in the underworld. I don't know, maybe. Kind of makes you think of the new, It Chapter 2, the kids who were dealing with Pennywise in the first one, and then years later they're all grown up, and now they're dealing with it again as grown ups. So maybe using like a concept like that. Maybe we go all the way back to maybe the origin of the hand, Storyline takes viewers back to the time when the hand was first, embalmed. Whose hand was this? Who got their hand cut off? What was her story or his story? Anyway, there's many ways they could go, whether it's prequel or a sequel. But regardless, as disturbed as I still am from watching this movie now 2 times, as much as I probably shouldn't go see it in order to preserve whatever level of like normalcy that is living up in my brain, I'll go see it on opening night. And I will make sure I tell you all about it. Now, speaking of films that I have thoroughly enjoyed, that have been sitting at the top of my list of films for the last couple of years, one that came out just a few months ago, I am very excited. I woke up today and read all of the lists for Oscar Award nominated films, and this one is very deserving, and that is The Substance. Woohoo, Demi Moore. As of right now, they are nominated and up for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Actress. So shout out to Demi Moore and that entire team who put that movie together. Definitely one of my favorite movies of last year. So excited to see what the film takes home come the Academy Awards. I think they deserve all 4 of those awards, but there's no doubt they're gonna walk away with one, at least one. And Demi Moore has been doing this for so many years, decades and decades in the business, and this is the first time that she is finding herself in this position to take home such a prestigious award in film. So really wishing her, all of the luck. I have my activator potion right here. I might shoot myself up with that and waddle my way down the carpet at the Academy Awards and hope that nobody notices. No, I probably won't do that. All right, everyone, that's it for this week's episode of Killing Time with Kayla. As all, thank you so much for joining me. Seriously, though, leave your comments below. Let me know what direction that you could see Talk to Me going in the next one, the sequel or potentially the prequel. But yeah, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you join me next time. If you do, I'll let you in.